don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
This well-known American comedian has had enough of woke culture and decided to humiliate it. He's been pretty expressive about it, dropping some bold opinions on the subject.
But in today's world, when truth conflicts with narrative, it's the truth that has to apologize. Being woke is like a magic moral time machine where you judge everybody against what you imagine you would have done in 1066, and you always win.
Woke culture focuses on spotting and fixing social injustices related to race, gender, and identity. Consequently, woke people aim to challenge unfair systems and promote fairness. However, this topic is highly sensitive and controversial because it deals with deep-rooted issues and often leads to debates about whether it goes too far in correcting history or becoming overly politically correct. Bill Maher, America's comedian, writer, and political commentator, didn't hold back on his opinions about the woke culture during his appearance on the very famous show The View. His comments were so strong that Whoopi Goldberg seemed ready to jump into this controversy and share her own point.
No,
that on the other side very easily.
But before we go, I want to say...
No, we're not going anywhere yet.
Later in this video, you will see just how much Bill destroyed woke culture with his arguments. However, it turns out that the term woke can be a pretty triggering and misunderstood word. Before he got into his critique, Bill took a moment to address this very issue and had this to say.
Absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't want to call it the super far left, but don't tell me the left
Or maybe the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
okay,
woke.
but we talked about that.
The topic of woke culture is an incredibly controversial and sensitive one, which makes it tricky to talk about. Even Bill Maher, known for his bold, often provocative opinions, treads carefully when discussing it. It's almost like he's trying to avoid getting too engaged in this debate.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and
migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't want to call it the super far left, but don't tell me the left
Or maybe the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
okay,
woke.
but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right.
Here's where it gets interesting. In a different interview, Bill Maher did not hold back when talking about the word woke. In fact, he went a step further and defined the term, explaining what it means in detail.
How do you define wokeness? Because I hear people use the term all the time, and it means something different to everybody.
Well, again, I think it's this collection of ideas that are not building on liberalism, but very often undoing it. I mean, 5 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was not a controversial figure among liberals. We liked him. Now they take his name off schools and tear down his statues. Really? Lincoln isn't good enough for you? 5-10 years ago, bedrock liberalism was we are striving to be a colorblind society where we don't see race. Of course, we see it, but it doesn't matter. That's not what woke is. Woke is something very different. It's identity. We see it all the time. It's always the most important thing. I don't think that's liberalism. I mean, I could mention so many issues like.
Despite how charged the term woke can be, Bill Maher argues that the real issue is how the left has evolved from its original ideals. In a bold statement, he goes on to say what he believes is the biggest threat to society, and it's not just the term left.
But we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat.
In this clip, Bill seems to agree on the fact that the far right poses the most significant and dangerous threat. But of course, it didn't end here. This is where things will get a little dark.
But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a joke. But,
Too dark.
There was a very awkward and quiet moment after he said that. It might come off as a dark joke, but Bill stands by his statement and contends that it's true and takes nothing away from his point. If you know Bill Maher, you can tell he's holding back in this interview a little bit. Bill has been known to rip woke culture apart in several other interviews in the past. For example, in an interview Bill had with DeSantis on the 30th of September 2023, Bill wasn't holding back on sharing his opinions about wokeness.
Fed up with woke too. That's why I have trouble with friends in Hollywood. I'm an old school liberal, and that's a whole different thing than woke. And I'm sympathetic to you because, you know, you very often like take on an issue where I feel like, yeah, there is crazy stuff going on in schools. There is crazy stuff. But the problem is it doesn't resonate with a lot of people who don't see it for whatever reason. And so they're like, why is this guy picking a fight with Mickey Mouse, right?
Well, they picked a fight with us. But, well, listen, so first of all, I do a lot more than just that. I think that's a little bit of a caricature. But this idea of ideology corrupting institutions, I see it in Los Angeles with the amount of crime that's here and the homelessness. There are people that commit crimes who are not prosecuted like they would be in Florida. Our state's crime rate's at a 50-year low. You elect these people like Gascon and what they did in San Francisco. Yeah. You can break into somebody's house or mug somebody and you don't end up going to jail. That doesn't work, but that's driven by ideology. So it's not just we're having just a philosophical debate. I think woke ideology has corrupted institutions. No. I think it's corrupted things like the CDC with how they handled COVID with the nonsense that they did. So it's a broader...
Bill has consistently been clear and straight about his takes on woke culture. As you might expect, he doesn't hold back or soften his opinions when discussing it on his own show Real Time with Bill Maher. Bill argues that in today's society, there's a big difference between objective truth and the narrative that woke culture seeks to promote. He believes that whenever those two clash, the truth often gets pushed aside. According to him, woke culture tends to focus on promoting a specific agenda, even if it means ignoring or twisting facts.
Let me tell you, if you're just live in Gaza for a day, and I'm not talking about while the war is on, I mean before the war. Trust me, you would go running and screaming and begging to live in Tel Aviv.
Bill is arguing that those who support Hamas may not fully understand what life is like under their rule. He suggests that experiencing the dark and harsh realities of Gaza would make them reconsider their stance and appreciate the freedoms in Tel Aviv. In a non-expected statement, Bill offers his take on how to end the war in Gaza, but not everyone is on board with his solution.
Of course, everybody is, but that's what happens in a war. Here's a way to stop that. Stop attacking Israel.
As you can see, only 2 women applauded, while the other 3 remained silent. A clear sign that they don't agree with the idea that Israel should stop being attacked. After that, Whoopi jumps in, pointing out that the media is only showing selective parts of what's actually going on in the world.
For you, because I don't know if you've noticed what I've noticed, but I find that oftentimes when I'm watching the news, I'm only getting portions, because one of the things that happens, I was listening to you talk about the kids that had the Hamas flags. It reminded me of when people were saying Antifa is there, and doing that. So bad players show up and make stuff happen. But do you find that the view that we're being shown seems to be meant to guide us into thinking about people one way, when in fact it may be a much bigger conversation?
In her view, the media seems to show us just one side of the story, shaping our thoughts to align with a narrative they want us to believe. Bill and Whoopi finally found common ground, agreeing that the news is misleading and lying to us. However, Bill took it a step further and started trolling the media.
Of course, I mean, the media is always going to just chase what is interesting to watch. I mean, I used to be able to watch the nightly news, for example. I can't do it. I mean, first of all, it should be called, here's some video we found that's fun to watch. That's not the news. Yeah. Like anything that happens on a plane. Like the plane skidded off the runway, so what? Call me when anybody died, and it's not, the door fell off. Okay, I'm sorry.
He criticized the media, saying they're only reporting misleading stories, like a plane incident where the door fell off and nobody was harmed. He describes the news as something fun to watch, rather than something that needs to provide accurate information.
Okay.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And then by the time you get to the last segment, it's just, the bears in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
It's just nothing.
Yeah.
And it's narrative over truth.
Narrative over truth. That's a pretty strong statement. And because of this, Bill says that it affects how he interacts with people that watch the news. For some reason, he finds it difficult to trust their perspective and take their opinions seriously.
I think we're tribal now, which is not good. And I think there's 4 tribes. Basically, there's old school liberals, which I would mostly count myself as, old school conservatives. There's still some of those left.
You've changed, though.
Did Bill really change from the old school liberal he claims to be? For years, he maintained this image. But on this show, a reminder slips into the conversation that he is not who he says he is. So how does Bill deal with that? We will get to that.
The liberal view of that was for compassion's sake. We're the liberals, we're compassionate. Let's get these people off the street. That's not the view of the, whatever word we're going to come up with for this. Their view of the homeless is they're an endangered species that needs to be protected in their natural habitat, living their best life under a bridge.
Bill started by talking about homelessness, comparing how liberals respond to them versus the woke. He proceeds to show the differences between the two, highlighting how each group approaches social issues differently and offering insights into their philosophies.
That to me is crazy. That's the kind of things, I haven't changed on that. I still think we should get these people off the street. That's
Yes.
the compassion sake. So I didn't change, they changed, and there's lots of examples of that.
Bill has always been clear and open with his opinions, unafraid of any hate he might receive. His comments on woke culture and the media were always direct and unfiltered, making him a unique commentator and comedian, setting him apart from others with his approach. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you're still watching, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like this video, I'm sure you will like this one too. See you later.